Hello team, how's it going? Welcome back to a new video. So today we're going to be looking at Ukrainian forces attacking the Russian army. Really looking forward to this one. Let's get into it.
Ukrainian forces have broken through Russia's defenses near the Orakovo-Vasilivka settlements in the Bakhmut area. Ukrainian soldiers are already beginning to dig in within the new lines. Within the last 24 hours, in addition, Ukraine has launched 12 air attacks on Russian troop and military vehicle. Russian forces were pushed out from their positions near the village of Orakovo-Vasilivka, lying northwest of Bakhmut. Ukrainian troops have achieved partial success in their advance and solidified new positions. According to the General Staff, Ukraine is conducting offensive operations both north and south of the city of Bakhmut. Russia is deploying its reserves, but suffering heavy losses. The General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces spokesperson, Andriy Kovalov, said on July 20th. Over the past day, Ukrainian troops repelled all enemy attacks near Orakovo-Vasilivka, Kryorivka, and Ivanivsky. Russians tried to regain their lost positions near Kurdyumivka, but had no success. Russians launched airstrikes near the Donetsk region's Pivnikna. Over 10 settlements were affected by Russian artillery strikes.
So just already look what we've seen so far. You can see that has just been bombarded. There's craters everywhere. And you've seen it in all the previous. There's a lot of sort of missile attacks, a lot of sort of tank and armoured vehicle direct fire, a lot of armoured manoeuvre going on here, which is very technical, very hard, and a lot of modern warfare, and hasn't really been done since. You think of Afghan, Iraq, wasn't really fighting as hard and as tough as this sometimes. And with the amount of bombardment that's going in as well, with sort of GPS guided missiles, direct tank fire, armoured on armour, that has been absolutely cratered. And it just makes me think back to when you do sort of your battlefield tours in the British Army, when you go through training and you go and see the World War II sites. And that's literally what it reminds me of at the moment. And it's pretty insane that the Ukrainians, and now even the Russians, but more the Ukrainians, this is what they're going through.
Earlier, the military reported advances also on Bakhmut's southern flank. Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said on July 19th that the Ukrainian troops liberated 7 square kilometers in the Bakhmut direction over the past week. Fighting has intensified at multiple points along the 500-kilometer, 930-mile front line. Battles are also raging along the southern front in Zaporizhia, where Ukrainian forces are making minimal gains and coming up against formidable Russian fortifications.
See, that's pretty tough. Like, can you imagine, right? So if you just go back ever so slightly.
Forces are making minimal gains.
There, you're in the back of an armoured vehicle and you've got to have some balls, some courage, right? You're in the back of an armoured vehicle. You don't know what is going on outside. You've then got to...
And coming up against
disembark and go out into open ground, not knowing actually what's there. You might have just had a headset on and you might have had a bit of sit reps coming through, a bit of information coming through. But basically, you've got to get back out of that armoured vehicle and then spread out and get into cover. And you don't know what's going through. It's actually really scary and you don't know what you're doing. So you've got to have some balls and some courage to do that. So you've got to give it to these soldiers.
Formidable Russian fortifications.
We live in a world filled with media streams, social platforms, and devices.
Russians have also been pressuring the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts while focusing their efforts on the Zaporizhia and Kherson fronts to prevent further advance of Ukrainian forces. Hanna Maliar,
so much artillery fire.
Minister of Defense, recently claimed that Kiev's forces had destroyed 6 Russian ammunition depots in the space of 24 hours, a remark that hinted at Ukrainian tactics.
Just look at this. Let's just play this on a bit. That, absolutely has been bombarded. There's no coming back from that. That's complete demolishment and rebuilding. No one can go back into this and live in it. It's not habitable. And this is a sort of situation that they're going through, and it really is like quite scary for the Ukrainians, that they're having to live through this right now. You know, a lot of the families have fled, but they haven't got, like, from these areas, they haven't got much to go back to. So it's quite scary, like, looking at that.
Ukrainian forces continue to deal significant blows to Russian tanks, with the current counteroffensive potentially hastening the destruction of Russian armored vehicles. The reasons for this one-sided outcome Just
wanted to go back there. Nice little ambush. Let's just have a look at that.
The reasons for this.
Yeah. So they're down in there. There's I'm guessing that's some sort of Jav team. A be down in there. Obviously hidden very well because they haven't been seen, and they've managed to strike the target. So good on them for still sitting there, staying hidden, not being seen. Obviously they've advanced, they've caught the enemy troops moving through, and they've hit the target. So they've literally done exactly what they meant to do. Now they need to destroy that, and either hold that position or get out.
This one-sided outcome are manifold. The Ukrainian forces' determination and tactical expertise have played a vital role, along with their possession of advanced anti-tank weaponry, rockets, artillery, and armored vehicles. This combination of factors has proven highly effective in countering the Russian tanks.
Like, I really want to know, obviously with the Ukrainians as well, but especially the Russians, how much armour have they lost in this? Because I reckon it's going to be quite a bit. After one thing I do say, they've been supplied with a lot of kit and equipment, the Ukrainians, but I feel like they've taken out a lot of heavy armour and a lot of armoured fighting vehicles.
The conflict in Ukraine has sparked discussions about the future of modern warfare and the relevance of main battle tanks. While tanks are unlikely to be completely phased out, their combat utility has come under scrutiny due to the effectiveness of anti-armor weapons and tactics demonstrated in this war.
So true. I've heard this before about tanks, where they're going and we're going to continue to use them. There is a need for armour. But how much longer is it going to go on with sort of direct fire from tanks? Are you just going to use sort of armoured vehicles to get around the battlefield, use them for recce? Are really going to see, tanks just driving around sort of trying to take out targets when you've got such good anti-tank weaponries and anti-tank teams? The Brits, I have to say, I know I'm British Army, a veteran. The guys are all over it, and they're very, very good. They can get in and out of position very quickly and strike the target.
The situation has underscored the importance of employing tanks strategically and using them in combination with other assets for optimal results on the battlefield. Throughout the course of the conflict, Ukraine has shown that with timely and consistent help, it can prevail on the battlefield even when its troops are outnumbered. Just as American and British handheld Javelin and N-Law missile systems helped Ukraine halt the advance of Russian tanks around Kiev in the early stages of the invasion, American high-mobility artillery rocket systems known as HIMARS have since changed the face of the conflict and helped Ukraine liberate a significant amount of territory previously occupied by the Russians. Such aid, when promptly and consistently supplied, dramatically improves the odds of a decisive Ukrainian victory over Russia.
Yeah, I do have to say they've had a lot of kit and equipment provided to them, and it looks like the Ukrainians are really, really utilising it really well. And the training they've had, they've really taken it on board, and they're doing really well. That's one thing is, you can give people the kit and equipment, but it's whether they use it correctly and whether they're capable of using it. And that's something I found that the Ukrainians are pretty good at. What's your thoughts on this? I feel like they've really taken on this kit and equipment. They're training on it, they're taking it seriously, and they're using it correctly.
The Ukrainian Defense Forces have gained tactical ground near the city of Bakhmut in Donetsk Oblast. Although the large concentration of Russian troops in this area of the front line indicates the strategic importance of this town to Russia.
As I said earlier, look at that. You're not coming back from that. That is demolished. Sad.
Ukrainian defenders are holding the initiative on the Bakhmut front, advancing along the flanks. The progress made by the defense forces in June, including reaching the necessary dominant heights, now allows them to exercise fire control. The scorched earth tactics the enemy used earlier are now turning against them. Our troops have had tactical progress. However, the enemy's engagement of such large forces here indicates that this is still a strategic point for them. All conditions have been created to retake Bakhmut, but it must be done with significantly fewer losses than the Russians suffered to capture the city.
As I mentioned earlier, that's all the craters in it. Look at that.
Colonel General Oleksandr Syrsky, commander of the ground forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, said, in an interview with the BBC Ukrainian service, Bakhmut is of strategic importance, primarily because it is the center of concentration of the main directions and roads. The roads from Debaltsev, Seversk, Horlivka, Kostiantynivka, and Sloviansk pass through the city. Using a well-developed road network, Russian troops can attack in at least 3 such operational directions. Ukraine's forces had also taken control of the main commanding heights around Bakhmut and established fire control over entrances and exits to the shattered city. Various dominant heights are
Have to say, that's pretty cool footage. Look at...
and established fire control over entrances and exits to the shattered city.
Can you imagine that striking the target? That is going to do some damage. Very good, very accurate, and capable of hitting the target if used correctly.
Various dominant heights are concentrated around Bakhmut, which allows troops to control most of the terrain around on the approaches to the city, which increases its role as a springboard for further offensive act. The armed forces of Ukraine are advancing in the area of Bakhmut. Every day, the soldiers are progressing forward a distance of 0.5 to 1 kilometer. Western analysts confirm Ukrainian claims of gains in the Bakhmut sector in recent days. In its latest daily assessment, the Institute for the Study of War said Ukrainian forces conducted counteroffensive operations on at least 3 sectors of the front on July 19th and made gains in these areas. Earlier this month, Kyiv said Russian forces in Bakhmut were trapped and the city was under Ukrainian fire control.
So for those that don't know, where is it? So that's very common. When you're sort of in an armoured vehicle, you are very limited on space. So you are going to have your kit strapped to the side somewhere, wherever you can find. Obviously trying to have it as neat as possible, and sort of the stuff that you need to hand will be closest to you. But you are very, very limited on space, so you will have your kit strapped to the side like that. Looks like just a day on the range training. Very, very interesting to see. I did enjoy that. Was very good to watch. Just, I haven't really caught up on Ukrainian stuff recently, and I really want to get back into it. But it's very, very interesting to see where they're currently at, and what they're doing, and how the counter-offensives are working, how they're using the bits and equipment that they have been given, and they're really taking out the sort of the enemy armour. And it's quite sad to see how bad the cities have been destroyed. Let us know if you're enjoying these videos, what you want to see next. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you soon.